Welcome inside episode 694 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. And as we bask in the glory of a 7-2-1 stretch for the Sens, we also have to turn the page to a busy weekend ahead.
And we have a very special SensCentral Citizen. It's Dr. Bob. You guys got to hear this story. He's going to 60 different Sens games this year without stepping foot on an airplane.
And all for a great cause. All that, and I've got boots on the ground for Belleville and Manitoba this weekend. Not only that, I've got a voice on the mic. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Friday, December 16th. The show is free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the road to 5,000 subscribers continues. Please be a friend and tell a friend that they can get their daily Ottawa Senators content right here, Monday through Friday, and on your favorite podcast app. Please go leave a review. It means a lot to us on Apple. 5 stars, please. I guess that goes without saying, but not only can you find us daily, but also on social media at SensCentral on Twitter and LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. Pilsy, this day always gives me some nostalgia. December 16th, 2017. When the Ottawa Senators hosted the Heritage Classic. I know that I was at the game. It was freezing cold. A lot of great memories flooding in on social media, but you watched that game on TV. Was the spectacle not beautiful?
It was super cool, and I was happy to watch on TV in the warmth of my couch in my bedroom, because that experience of going through that must have been terrible if you're a Habs fan and you sat through it and you saw 0 goals the whole game. So Sens fans, they were happy to get a little frostbite when it comes with the W, but yet again for the Habs, who lost last night to the last place Anaheim Ducks, just throwing that in there, that's a tough experience.
Oh my God, man. Don't even get me started on the Habs. Now I have people replying on my Twitter saying that I'm obsessed with the Habs. I just think it's hilarious. And how could you not? Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm pulling up right now. They did one of those panoramic photos at the game, and I zoomed in on us. Do we not look absolutely frozen solid or what?
Yeah, that is wild. Barely any skin showing.
Yeah, absolutely. You get a beer, you'd go back to your seat, and it would be frosty, like a Slurpee at that point, like a slushie at that point. It was absolutely insane, but the spectacle was cool. And it's one of those things where you do it for the fans. Clearly, the players didn't love freezing, and you heard some war stories after. It's unfortunate. Mark Mathot was just off the team, and he can't really speak to it because the outdoor-indoor game in Vancouver that I also had the pleasure of being at was not an outdoor game like we saw in Ottawa. One of the oldest outdoor games in history. I want to say just after the original Heritage Classic, that iconic photo. Jose Theodore wearing the toque over his helmet. I think that's the only game that was colder than the one in Ottawa. I think it was minus 25, minus 30 with wind chill, but 3-0 win warmed everything up. It was a great atmosphere. Let us know in the comments your experience. I want to read all of them about your time at Lansdowne Park. And also, those tickets are such a good keepsake. I've got mine in storage right now, but look at that. If you can see it, it's like the silver ticket, like the Willy Wonka, the golden ticket. These things were unbelievable. Just a great night. And the Senators, 2-0 all time in outdoor games. So they got to keep that going next time.
Yeah, another outdoor game, please.
Can we say that we will be boots on the ground at the next outdoor game?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
We will, because I've said all along, I want to be at every Senators outdoor game. It's doable. It's like every 5, 6, 7 years. But hey, if they keep winning, in the atmosphere around it, all the concessions out front that they have, everything that goes into the fan experience to those games are always top notch. So we'll make sure that happens. I feel like it's going to be on the road because 2017 was in Ottawa. I have a feeling maybe Olympic Stadium, Montreal, or I guess that's a dome, but they've played in domes before. Anyways,
Yeah.
also let us know that. Where would the next best place for Ottawa to play an outdoor game be?
The only thing that concerns me, well, it's a good and a positive. They're getting wild with these outdoor games, putting them in southern spots of the US. Like, keep to the idea and the beauty of the outdoor game. It's got to be cold. It's got to feel like you're on a pond outdoor like we all did growing up. Like, keep to that. I don't want to see palm trees and stuff like that, and the ice is terrible condition when it's like that. So yeah, I'll be very interested to see where the next outdoor Ottawa Senators game is.
And shout out Craig Anderson for allowing us to not have to see a single Canadians goal in that game. The goal scores in that game, and then we'll move on to the weekend. Jean-Gabriel Pageau, of course he scored. It was against the Habs. He got his 4th of the season, assist to Erik Karlsson and Tom Pyatt. So you know that warmed up Guy Boucher throughout the rest of the game. Then in the third period, it was Bobby Ryan on an unassisted breakaway. It was so sick. It was almost like a Mark Stone steal snipe Selly type goal where he just took it in, beat Price over the glove. Beauty. And then Nate Thompson with 11 seconds left sent the beat the traffic chance into oblivion. Although Bobby making it 2-0 with under 3 minutes left. That was great. So it was a 1-goal game. It was a low-scoring game, and you could tell because I think everyone's fingers were frozen as well on the ice. But great atmosphere, and I think a lot of fans have amazing memories from that game. Let's make some new memories, though. This weekend, the Senators get a measuring stick game, I'm going to call it, against the Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Larkin, we talked about yesterday. Hronik likely out. Larkin practiced for the first time.
Well, Hronik also back at practice, so I actually think he's going to be in this game. Unfortunately for Sens fans, we're glad he's healthy, but that's a big piece for the Red Wings. Yeah.
Great player. Dylan Larkin was wearing a non-contact jersey, so I guess we'll see. We're not going to do any lineups. You can listen tomorrow morning. We're going to put out that quick 1-minute morning skate type video on YouTube and on TikTok, which I only use for these uploads. Hilarious that we even have an account. And on Instagram, lockedon.senators. So we'll have that for you tomorrow morning. It's going to be a busy weekend, as I mentioned, for me, going straight from work, 4 a.m. to noon, then over to the Canada Life Center. Going to go meet up with footy and call some AHL hockey Saturday and Sunday. So I've been doing a lot of prep for that. We'll finish off today's show discussing a few of the storylines to watch for in that game. But Pilsy, we're talking Detroit. We're talking Ottawa, 2 teams that are in similar phases of their rebuild. Detroit started strong. Ottawa started weak. And now it seems like the standings are getting awfully close between these 2 teams.
It's much closer than before. That's for damn sure. And there's no reason why the Sens, in my mind, can't leapfrog the Detroit Red Wings. Like, you talk about the Ottawa Senators having a lot of injuries. So does Detroit. We just mentioned Larkin, but no Tyler Bertuzzi. And then Jacob Vrana, he was in the players assistance program, but now he's on kind of from my understanding, he's on the next stage where he kind of has to go through some clearance, and he's on his way to making his way back to the NHL. So no Larkin, no Bertuzzi, and no Vrana. Like, those are kind of the top 3 offensive weapons for this team. So this is now a time where Ottawa needs to take advantage of that, even though they have injuries of their own.
Yeah, they certainly do. And when you look at Jacob Vrana, similar to what Bobby Ryan went through, I'm not sure exactly what the reason is why he's in the player assistance program, but in terms of being away from the team for, I believe, 60 days is the minimum. It was definitely in October that he left Red Wings camp.
He only played a couple games. Yeah.
Our friends over at Locked On Red Wings will be all over that. Definitely recommend going to check them out as well. Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley, 2 beauties. And we might even have an old friend on the show, Pilsy. Brendan Purdy, our first ever producer, said that he wants to be on the postcast for one of these 3 Red Wings.
Oh boy, look out. A good old Sasky boy.
Yes, absolutely. But as we pull up the standings here, if you're watching on YouTube, like Detroit with only 3 wins in their last 10 games, this not only could it be a measuring stick game, but this could also be a, hey, objects in the mirror closer than they appear game, because these head-to-head matchups, all 3 of them before the new year, are going to be of massive importance in terms of the Atlantic Division seeding, because Buffalo seems to kind of win one, lose one. Like that Tage Thompson, what an absolute weapon he is. And then the Habs can't beat a team that didn't have a single regulation win on the road. So I'm not really worried about where Montreal is, but look at the standings, Billsy. Every team above Ottawa right now has played 1 or 2 more games, or 3 if it's Washington, except for Detroit. And that's a team who you control their destiny more than anybody else.
Big time, yeah. And Detroit's on a 4-game losing streak also. So they've really been struggling here. I think the interesting thing is, who are we going to see in net for the Red Wings? Because the Red Wings, they got a 3-pronged goalie situation going on with Husso, Nedeljkovic, and my guy, Magnus Hellberg. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they put out there for that game.
Oh, no. Am I going to have to pull up the graphic of ex-Sens goalies?
Oh, yeah, true. Hey, but at least Magnus Hellberg is no longer perfect in his NHL career. So we don't have to worry about him keeping that streak going against the Sens.
Nice. He was good in that loss, though. Like, that wasn't his fault that Minnesota got the 4-1 win. Philip
He's a good
Gustafson.
tendy.
We might have to pull up the graphic for him on Sunday. We could get back to back.
I was going to say that's probably more likely where we're going to have that, because Philly franchise has been very good for the Minnesota Wild. But in hindsight, I'm still 2 thumbs up for that trade, because
yes,
it wasn't going to work. Philly franchise being here, I think he needed a change of scenery. The Sens needed someone that could support Forsberg better right now. So overall, that's just such a great hockey trade for both teams.
Could you imagine if while Ottawa was on that losing streak, Philip Gustafson was required to play every game? Like Forsberg started, 7 games in a row, it felt like?
Yep.
No, that would have been bad news Bears. But and Wham Bam Cam, is that going to catch on maybe? I kind of like it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
All right, but hey, Philly franchise, that's tough to beat.
Yeah, it's so
good.
Good.
The Sens won that trade when we got rid of Gus the Bus, really. The nickname needed to get on out of town.
Does anyone have more nicknames? Philly franchise, Gus the Bus, Goose. Gus. Yeah, like this guy's got a lot of nicknames.
Philip. Hey,
That's
we got a
his
little.
name.
No, it's not. Remember? We were specifically asked to cut it out of our interview with a separate goalie.
I actually totally forgot about that. That's very funny.
Lars, I want to say is his name. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Great to see Philip Gustafson doing well. All right, why don't we say hi to our friends at Shawarma Palace? Then we'll get into some more news and notes, including talk about burying the lead, Pillsy. We're 11 minutes into the show, and we have not mentioned that Josh Norris was wearing a contact jersey at practice. What does that mean? How long is Tyler Mott out? And some other news and notes before we get into a little Belleville preview, as they're in my neck of the woods.
And Ross, this episode is also brought to you by NHTSA. And this is an important message, guys, especially during the holidays. You're hanging out with family, friends, you're having some eggnog and rum, you're having a couple drinks, and a few become few too many. And as the evening ends, people start to go home and you think about calling a ride, but you live so close. You're just at your aunt and uncle's house. It's a 5-minute drive. It's not a big deal. You'll make it home. A lot of people have that mindset. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over during that time anyways? Even so, what's going to happen, right? Your insurance goes up. You could use your license. You could lose your job. You could total your car, and you could even kill someone. It's very, very serious. You need to know about all the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. And the thing is, it's avoidable. So we need to stop people from going behind the wheel when they're under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our road for one simple reason: to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe. Plan ahead and get a ride. It's so simple. Have a designated driver, walk home, get an Uber, get a cab, stay the night. There's so many better choices you can make. So it only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, Pillsy. So it's a busy weekend for the Ottawa Senators. We got a 1 p.m. start Saturday against Detroit and Sunday in Minnesota. That game is at 2 o'clock. So stay tuned. In the postcast on Saturday, we'll touch on that game against the Minnesota Wild as well. In the postcast, I should mention on Saturday, it's going to be a little bit later on, right after I finish up with the Moose game. I'm going to jump on with the Martian. Pillsy, you're up at the farm, and if you thought the mic was bad last time, which I believe we fixed, it sounds really good. Pillsy's got the aviation style headphones like I do now. We're in for a treat if he tried to do it from his farm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons about a farm. The internet is not a pro of that, so I don't want to put anyone through that. And also, the internet is not connected to the audio issue I'm having. I believe it's a wire issue, so I'm waiting to order a new wire so I can get back to using my mic. But for now, I think I sound good. I hope I sound good. And trying out some new headphones, trying to match with Ross here. We got a uniform, black headphones only.
Absolutely. Team uniform for sure. Before we get to our SensCentral Citizen, I do want to call myself out. It's obviously a serious topic. We do not want anyone drinking or driving or getting behind the wheel. But I know somebody's going to screenshot it. I put on the bottom lower third, I said, stay safe this holiday season. Do not drive and drive. We do definitely allow you to drive while you're driving. We encourage it.
Yes, and that's the thing. Only drive while you're driving. And Ross, speaking of driving, oh my God, someone that's going to be doing a lot of driving is our friend Dr. Bob. And this story is crazy, Ross. This is something this is on my bucket list to do when I'm older and retired and have the time to do it. Is check out all the arenas you can. Go travel. I love that he's doing it all on the road. I'm a big driving guy. I've driven to British Columbia and back 3-4 times, and I love
my car to Winnipeg.
I hand delivered your car to Winnipeg. Ross, I was helping you move to Winnipeg, and I was helping my buddy Sam, shout out Sam, I was helping him move to Vancouver Island. So that was a 2-person trip. I was helping out my friends move, and I don't mind. I love driving. So great stories from Dr. Bob here.
And then you went out to Halifax. You've been across the entire country.
I've been everywhere, man.
And so has Dr. Bob. So let's get to a very interesting story here with this week's SensCentral Citizen. All right, we now welcome on this week's SensCentral Citizen. What an amazing story this is. Dr. Bob is with us, and you might have heard him on TSN 1200 throughout this season. He is attending 60 regular season Ottawa Senators games this year during the 30th anniversary season. And not only that, he's not stepping foot in an airplane. Dr. Bob, welcome to Locked On Senators. How are you doing today?
Good to be with you guys, Ross and Brandon. It's great to be able to share about the tour.
Yes, and before we get to the tour, we start off every SensCentral Citizen the same way. How did you initially become an Ottawa Senators fan? Because if anyone's following you on Instagram, Dr. Bob Sens Tour, there's some old photos like you've been around the block before you started this tour.
I have. I've been a fan since the very beginning. In fact, way back when in 1989-90, the Ottawa Senators initial group were selling season ticket passes. And in fact, I bought a pass for my dad and a pledge form, in other words, and for my brother and myself. Really, I meant them for me. But my dad's, and I gave it to him for Christmas. And he said, "Hey, Bob, where's the socks? There's never going to be a Senator team. How is this going to work out?" And it turned out it worked out. So we got the 1,050th selection. And we were able to get seats about 6 rows up from ice level at the blue line for the old Ottawa 67 stadium.
Yep.
So that was fun.
Wow, that's awesome. I always love hearing from people that were able to follow this team from day one. Now, were you at the very first Senators home game?
I was at the very first game, and my son Colin and I were there October 8th, 1992. It was a great day. There's pictures that I've shared with Ross at times, and we were actually, that's the whole idea. If you're going to go to a game and be a fan, be a fan.
Yeah.
Really cheer, go Sens go. And it's fun to do that when I'm in Dallas, for example, and the fans around are going, what's going on here? And so at any rate, I wore a Brian Mulrooney hat or mask. And actually, at the very beginning, got on the CBC initial where Ron McLean is saying, "Here we are in Ottawa. There's been no team for 30 years." and yeah, that's the picture. And my son, as you can see, started saying, "Dad, I'm not so sure." But he said, "Here's Mila and her son. And here's Brian. I'm not sure why Brian's not sitting with Mila, but So that was fun.
I love it. What a way to start first game. And at that point,
Wow.
it was a victory over the upcoming Stanley Cup champions. Were you convinced, hey, maybe this expansion process is bogus? We're going to be a good team right away.
Oh yeah, I did. I was pretty enthusiastic, and then it got more and more disappointing as time went on. But still, it was good. We were building, and Yashin and Dag, and grew from there. So it was good.
That's awesome. Let's fast forward a little bit to this tour because I'm so curious and I really want to dive into the idea behind it. Now, we know that you're pledging to a cancer donation fund, and it's cancer.ca / Dr. Bob Sens Tour. Everyone can go there and learn more. Now, tell us the inspiration behind deciding 60 games and then not taking a plane anywhere. How many miles are you putting on your car this year?
Well, I'm not sure how many. It's probably going to be about 90,000 maybe. But so far, it's been 20 games, and it's 31,000 kilometers. I knew it was their 30th anniversary, and so I wanted to celebrate the 30th anniversary. And it was first year of my semi-retirement. I'm only doing about 10 hours of medical work a week now, 10 to 20, and I take care of a seniors residence and come back to Leamington, my home base. And so that's why you had to wait till 1 o'clock today, because I was doing an office this morning. So yeah, I thought 30 is pretty easy to do. So why not try for 60? And then in terms of ecology, every time you get on a plane, even though somebody else is going to go, you could argue, but the plane fuel is tons. And so I've got a RAV4, which is a hybrid. We get 7 liters per 100 kilometers, and that saves on gas. And then you're there. You can go wherever you want. When I was in Anaheim in LA, I got to get to the beaches, things like that.
That's awesome. So which arenas had you already been to and which are new ones? Like, is this a brand new experience for you, or have you already kind of checked out a lot of these arenas?
It's a brand new experience for me. I went in 2017 with a lovely playoff run. I was there actually in Game 7, where the Senators lost in overtime to Chris Kunitz. That was very disappointing, and I was there. But yeah, otherwise I haven't done much touring because I've been a very busy doctor.
So really taking advantage of a little extra time this year. And then you said you've been to 20 games so far. Are you, and I'm assuming you're including home games in that too. How much have you made it up to the Canadian Tire Center?
Well, it's kind of it splits whatever way the schedule goes, and it kind of worked out from there. But when I'm ever in Ottawa, I have the opportunity of taking some nieces or nephews, brother-in-laws, and that's usually a lot of fun. And I stay at their place. And then when I'm away, half the time I'm actually car camping in this RAV4. I've got a space where I've got a bed in the back, and
wow.
So the biggest challenge is going to be this weekend, where I'm going from Detroit to Minnesota, and it's supposed to be about -10. On that night, it's about 1,000 kilometers. So there's no use in getting a hotel for 5 hours.
Right.
So I'm going to sleep in the car. I've got a bit of a car, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, I don't want to scare you, Bob, but that's the local weather here next week when you're coming to the Peg. So
yeah, I have in Winnipeg. I should be okay. I've got a good friend that I'm going to be visiting with them.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure to say hi at the game. I'll be there as well on Tuesday.
Yeah, I like to go down to the Glass every game and get some funny looks sometimes from some of the players, because I wear this crazy hat, the big Ottawa Senator Centurion hat.
Yep.
We had from 1997 in the playoffs. That's when they first came out, and my 2 sons and I were at the first game of Buffalo, Ottawa, when they won in Game 2 in Buffalo. So
you can't miss Dr. Bob. We're pulling it up if you're watching on YouTube. That styrofoam type hat, that's legendary. I absolutely loved it. Have any of the players kind of given you a look like, hey, I've seen you at a few of these games so far?
Stützle has. He actually waved, which was nice. Kachuk is very serious. He doesn't give me a grin, but and then Shabbat, I think he seems to recognize that I'm there, so as well.
That's great. So how did you plan which 22 games you weren't going to go to?
It was actually it was more trying to sort out how to get back to Leamington and do the coverage that I wanted to do here, and also visit with my family. I have a grandson that I hang out with and daughter who lives in Leamington, and that's always lots of fun too.
Because what really caught my attention, you went out for the California trip.
Yes.
Then you came back to Ontario only to then go to Dallas.
Well, actually, in between, it went to New York. So it went from LA back to Leamington, and I had a day and a half here, and then went to the Ranger game. Actually had a grandson overnight the night before the Ranger game, and then went to New York and caught that game. So I was on both coasts in about a space of 5 days.
Amazing.
That's so awesome. And I love that you're driving too, because you really get a sense of where you're going and how crazy the distances are when you drive. Like when it's a 4-hour flight and you've traveled thousands of kilometers, it doesn't seem that intense. But when you're driving for days from Leamington to LA, you get to see it all. What's been your favorite stop so far? Even regardless of whether you saw hockey there or not, like what's been your favorite destination on your road trip?
I was very impressed with coming out of Vegas, going into Utah, and I car camped in Utah, and the desert and the Badlands there were really impressive to me. And then also coming out of LA, the game was a night game, and so I got as far as, well, I went about 300 kilometers after the game because I'm excited. I'm enjoying the game. I'm ready to really go to sleep. So I car camped on the way out of there too, and I actually made it to the Grand Canyon. It was only an extra hour and a half's drive out, so I had about an hour there. But yeah, so it's been a little fast at different places that you'd like to spend longer at.
Yeah, but, that's fair.
Yeah.
Now, have you been doing all this driving on your own?
Yes. I don't think anybody else would be crazy enough to go on this trip. So
I mean, that's fair. So hopefully you got a lot of podcasts, a lot of music lined up that you've got entertainment for all those long trips.
And one of the things is actually noise pollution, because I'm an older guy, and if I run, I'd love to listen to, and in fact, I do listen to the rock music. I've got XM going and other music. Listen to TSN 1200 a lot, and but it's better to have some space where I'm actually quiet and just don't even hear anything. It makes it easier on the ears.
So the Ottawa Senators won one of their first 8 road games. Were you at any point reconsidering this bold strategy?
After the Vegas game, we were feeling pretty down. That's right. But no, I was never reconsidering it. But I just thought there'd be changes. And in fact, there were changes. Early on, I've spoken about concerns about coaching, and the coaching seemed to make some significant changes within their own system. And then also very clearly, I could sense in Anaheim and then in LA that Brady Tkachuk really supports the present coaching system. And he put out so strongly, that Anaheim game, he got the Gordie Howe and stood up for Jake Sanderson. And it was just fantastic the way that changed. So after the LA game, talking to TSN, I said the changes were there. The defensive system seems to be doing better. And then Zaitsev himself had so much trouble at the beginning of the year. When he went down to Belleville, he's come back. He's been very good, relatively speaking. And so, those kind of changes have happened, and the team's doing so much better. I think there's a chance for the playoffs, hopefully. And if it goes into the playoffs, I'm going to more than 60 games for sure.
Oh man, that's awesome! I love the optimism, Bob. So who are your favorite players this season? Like, who's really got your attention for the Sens?
I love Tkachuk. He's fantastic, obviously, and Chabot is doing very well now too. Jake Sanderson's strong, very, very strong player. So yeah, those are the players I'd say mainly. And then also Matthew Joseph. I think he's been doing better than people sometimes think about. I love his speed. Unfortunately, he's injured now, so I've seen he's been playing well too.
I like that. And since you've been at at ice level, basically at all these games. I'm curious of which away player, I should say home player on these other games has really caught your attention, maybe made you a fan of them.
I have to admit that I don't really get down to the other end to see whoever the other team is very much.
He's all Sens.
Yeah, he's got his guy.
I'm right down there with the Sens.
I love that. I love that. So next up, your closest game you're going to go to, is that going to feel underwhelming just hopping over to Detroit?
It might, but the challenge of getting to Minnesota the next day is going to be so I'm going just on my own to that game, even though, some other people could come, but I want to be able to leave right after. And so it should be fun.
Afternoon game's key though, because that would have been a tough game to make it to an afternoon in Minnesota. I
wasn't originally going to go from Detroit to Minnesota, but I revised my plan and went for that. So
nice. No, that'll be exciting. And it must be a little more fun now that the Sens are starting to string together some road wins over the last little while. They've been a lot better on the road. And you're able to notice that in terms of the change of play. I remember you just saying that you've seen some changes in DJ Smith's system. What has it just been a better awareness in the defensive zone? Maybe something that they've done offensively that's made you see a noticeable
putting DeBrincat on the left side and letting him have a better shot on the power play was key. I liked that JBD was playing for a while. Unfortunately, he got his high ankle sprain. And then that break, as it turned out, actually helped Zaitsev to play better. I think the forwards are coming back better now than they were because it's a whole 5-man system that makes a difference and leaves the defense less isolated. They're covering better. I love Giroux. You were asking about players. Giroux has been phenomenal. And in fact, people who have listened to me on Team 1200 asking for Giroux to come. I've been hoping for him to come all last year, and he came. It's been wonderful to have him in Ottawa.
Yeah, having that veteran is so important to this team because Brady Tkachuk's one heck of a leader, and so is Thomas Chabot, but you need someone that's been through the grind of the season for that long as Claude Giroux has. Bob, which of your stops are you most excited about that you haven't hit yet? Which one is kind of extra highlighted on your calendar?
Probably in Chicago. Would be interesting because it's supposed to be a big noisy stadium, and then that whole trip because it's going to be March break, go across Chicago to Seattle to Vancouver. And then Vancouver, they play the very next night in Calgary. It's physically possible, but it'll depend on the weather. If I get snowed out, I'm not going to do something stupid. Okay. Yeah. So, and then as we were talking about the Canadian Cancer Society, I've really appreciated my patients and the struggles that they go through with cancer sometimes. This hat is actually from a Toronto Maple Leaf fan who was a good patient of mine and struggled through his prostate cancer. And so I haven't worn it till this tour. And so that's why it's sort of vintage 2015 or 14 probably. So, yeah. And it's been a good time being in Leamington. So.
That's absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up again because we're encouraging everyone go visit www.cancer.ca/Dr. Bob's Sens Tour. Dr. Bob Sens Tour. I see the S. I carried that in. Dr. Bob.
And 60 games. Feel free to look at it. 50 cents a game would be $30, and you'd get a tax receipt as well. So.
There you go. That's awesome. And hey, if you see Dr. Bob in the concourse, make sure you go say hi. Hey, you're always. Are you meeting other Sens fans at these away games?
Yes, I am. It's been good. In New York, the New York game was phenomenal. That was a big moment, with Brady Tkachuk fighting Trouba and then winning in overtime. That was fantastic. And so I only wear my big foam hat when they score. And got it. Otherwise, you're obstructing people's views and encouraging everybody to be a real fan. Make noise, make as much noise as you can. If you're going to go to a game, be crazy and be a fan.
I love that. That's great advice, Pills?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love your energy, Bob. That's exactly what people need and what being a hockey fan is all about. Now, final question for me, Dr. Bob, and thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. We really appreciate it. As every fan does, they think they're an armchair GM expert. So if you were Pierre Dorion, What are you doing? Are you standing pat and saying, okay, we got a bit of a win streak here, let's ride it out? Or, hey, we got some momentum, let's add to this team, let's add a defenseman or what have you? Like, what would be your strategy right now if you were GM?
I was, as we said, after the Vegas game, I was quite discouraged and thought we should do an awful lot of things. Right now, I think we're doing things well, and I wouldn't do much of anything. I would really just stand pat and work with this and continue to work with this because the team seems to be putting it together, and hopefully we'll continue to put it together. When JBD is available, have him come back and play. Get Lassie Thompson up here to play. Get the young guys playing. That would be important too.
I love it. Well, Dr. Bob, do you know what your record is so far this season? My final question for you.
Well, I did look it up recently. And so for 20 games, there's 10 wins, 8 losses, and 2 overtime losses.
So basically 500. Yeah.
You're above 500. Come on.
Yeah, a little bit above 500.
All right. Well, let's keep that rolling, Bob. Go ahead.
We're going to reach 500 as a team because the next 5 games are 5 games in 7 nights. It's going to be a real challenge. I hope to make it to each one of those, but you never know what snow's going to do. But we should be able to make it overall to better than 500 by Christmas.
Well, that's the goal. We look forward to checking in with you later on this season and make sure that everything's going great with the tour and that the Sens keep winning. Dr. Bob, it was great chatting with you today. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, stick taps to Dr. Bob for joining us. If you're at any Sens game all year and you see that wild styrofoam Centurion hat, you got to go say, what up, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, I think
on Sens.
He's going to be someone that's easy to spot. And I just love his vibe and his energy. Like, first off, what a considerate dude. He's driving to all these games because he believes it's better fuel economy for the earth. So environmentally friendly. And then he's talking about, oh yeah, I got the crazy hat, but I only put it on after they score because I want everyone to be able to see and I don't want to obstruct anyone's views. That's awesome. What a great dude.
I'm going to be getting a photo with him in front of the Sens and at warm-ups on Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. On Twitter, at SensCentral is where you can find the show. All right, so the Sens are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. Really good. How confident are you that they can continue? This is a tough stretch. On the road, 3 and 4 nights with travel. I know that Minnesota to Winnipeg's a hop, skip, and a jump, but still, you're playing 2 afternoon games, day off, night game. That I feel like just for your body clock, how often do you play back-to-back afternoon games?
Yeah, super weird. That's for sure. Yeah, definitely a weird move.
So what's your confidence level in what do you think they're going to bring home out of these 4 games? Sorry, 3 games, 4 days.
I got them beating the Red Wings. And not only are they beating the Red Wings, but they're doing it in regulation. That is so important. You can't have these 3-point games in your division, especially when you're trying to catch up. I think Minnesota and Winnipeg, those are going to be tough games. If they can have a 1-1-1 record on this road trip with emphasizing the win in Detroit, I'd be happy with that.
And we're going to emphasize the win in Winnipeg.
Yes. Okay. So
should I say win a peg?
Putting the win in Winnipeg. I'll say I'll change it then to 2-0-1. Yeah, because let's get you a win. Let's keep your 9-0 record of when you're at games. We got to get to 10-0. You got to hit that double digit. So yes, I will revise that 2-0-1 for your Ottawa Senators. And I feel like the games versus Minnesota, they're always randomly like close games. Like I feel like they typically go to overtime. So I like that.
Yeah, I didn't love the first result against against Minnesota earlier on this season. That was the 4-2 loss at home. That was what started the 7-game losing streak.
Yeah, so that's true.
It's going to be the finale of that back and forth. I feel like DeBrincat had so many opportunities in that game. Remember the glove save that Fleury made on him?
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. It was wild. It certainly was.
I didn't even do that on purpose.
All right. Well, we wonder if we'll get Philip Gustafsson, who's 5-0 in his last 5 starts with like a .940 save percentage. He's been kicking them out left and right. But would he have been able to do that without time in Belleville? I don't know. But you know who's in tending net in Belleville now is Matt Sogard. We already said happy birthday to him last year, 22, but I am extremely excited. If we're doing a locked on player for me this weekend up in the press box at the Canada Life Center, it's Matt Sogard, because how good of a story would it be if he can string, because it's always been a little inconsistent with him. When he's great, he's great, but there's some dips and duels all over the road with that one. So if he can come back, because in his last 5 games, rocking a .930 save percentage. So my lockdown player is going to be Matt Sogard this weekend.
And the key here is, Ross, last time the Belleville Senators were in Winnipeg, didn't they play 3 straight games? 2 of them were against the Moose, but didn't they have a game the night before as well, or something like that? Because Sogard ended up playing both of those back-to-back games, did he not? And the one game went really well, and the other one went very poorly.
Exactly. Well, I don't know if it was the day before, maybe 2, but Mando got hurt in that game. So they ended up signing Logan Fladell, and he was not AHL ready. At least the team didn't think so. So they went back to back, and it was a shootout game the first night, and Sogard made like 35 saves, and then he was in net the next day, and it was a quick turnaround. It was a night game and then an afternoon game. So not even 24 hours. So definitely a tough turnaround for him and a tough outing. The Moose were a lot better though last year than they are now.
Definitely, that's fair. But the thing is, now you got a guy in Antoine Bibeau that is looking very solid, and I see no reason why they can't give a split to both those goalies this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see though, because Winnipeg's got some injuries. So like Mikey Asimon, who's been a really good player for them the last little while, he's up. Kovacevic, we talked about him with Montreal. He was a stud last year for the Moose. And they're 2 young guns who Sens fans would know the names from our draft coverage. Chaz Lucius and Brad Lambert are both away from the team, getting set for World Juniors. Now, either of them have really been producing at the AHL. Lambert doesn't have a point in his last 11 games after starting the season with 3 and 4. So he's slowed. He's such an enigma. He's an interesting prospect to follow, but certainly it's a more veteran team, and it'll be a good test, I think, for Belleville. It's one of the only times where Belleville flies to a game rather than take the Dr. Bob route. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they do. Obviously, I'm excited to catch up with Igor and Angus and see how the boys are doing, but they're obviously a little thin too. No Lucchini, no Rourke Chartier. Like they're gonna have to dig deep here. Dylan Hetherington's up with Ottawa right now, so they're gonna have a tough test ahead. But could some be reassigned soon? Maybe. Josh Norris, we mentioned, is back at Sens practice, and mid-practice, he took off the non-contact jersey. Still at least a couple weeks away, I'd imagine.
That's an interesting move mid-practice. You got to think the training staff or the doctors are like, Josh, what are you doing? Like, we told you to go out there in the yellow. What are you doing taking it off midway? Again, usually I'm positive Pillsy, but I'll preach patience on this one. I'm not getting my pom-poms out and super excited about this. For me, it's nice, but it doesn't mean a whole lot here. I think the Ottawa Senators need to be very, very careful with Josh Norris. Like, I don't even want to think about having him in the lineup until at least the new year. Like I'm penciling earlier. I kind of had March as a possible return. I'm looking at February now. Like I don't want him back till February because I don't want to risk any sort of quick injury again. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Again, Brandon Piller, not a doctor. I don't know if more time will be that much beneficial, but we cannot have him come back too early and then take a face off and his shoulder just falls out of his socket there. Don't want that.
No, definitely not. But on the other hand, once you decide not to do surgery, there's only so much rehab you can do until if you feel good, you have to try it. There's no other way. You can wait and wait and wait, but what are you going to do? Like at some point, if you're like, hey, it feels good, then it feels good.
Yeah.
It's a really delicate situation. I just hope that it's not rushed because Timmy is out of lineup and they're like, hey,
exactly.
You sure?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah. So I don't want to see that. Do you think maybe this would be something, maybe he sees a conditioning stint in Belleville or no?
No, I don't think so. I think
probably not.
Either he's ready or he's not. I don't think guy that's still men. It's not like he's going down and playing with the 67s where he can just be stronger.
I think the reason you would do that is just so the spotlight's not on him that much, and maybe you can totally shelter him, like only playing in good scenarios up against softer matchups, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we know that Josh Norris is a competitive kid. There's no doubting that. However, I'm curious if he's looking at the schedule and seeing 3 games against his hometown team, a team that he had 4 goals and an assist against last year, including a hat trick in 3 games, and being like, hey, that New Year's Eve game, that I'm licking my chops getting into that one. I'm not saying it's smart, but look at Pinto. He grew up a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Well, guess what? He made sure he was back against Pittsburgh, and that's when he re-injured himself.
I was going to say that is not a good example because that was worst case scenario.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this through. But again, once you do not elect surgery, it's not like a broken bone where it's like, hey, this is a timeline. No, you rehab it until it doesn't hurt anymore.
And every person and injury is different, right? Like just because one player has the same injury doesn't mean if they have an exact similar timeline. So that's important to connect the dots here too, is who really knows. And I'm glad he didn't elect to do surgery because at least it opens the door for him to come back. But it's an interesting decision, that's for sure.
It's going to be heart in your stomach season for his first few shifts, eh?
Yeah, big time. Oh, Ross, more the face-offs is what I'm going to be looking for more than the shifts because I think that's where you put a lot of pressure on your shoulders for those draws.
Would it be crazy to say put him at wing when he comes in? Or even like Giroux.
Just have Brady take draws or Giroux. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah,
so
I like that actually.
Because then he's still playing down the middle, but you don't have to worry about the torque on bringing faceoffs back. Especially, I mean, Giroux's a winger, and he's the second highest faceoff percentage in the entire league again.
I know, it's actually insane that that's the case here, especially like when Derek Brassard is your number one center, and you got a guy like Claude Giroux right there. It seems a little crazy to me.
Yeah, it's I wonder what that's all about because initially he came up as a winger, right? Philly was so loaded down the middle with Carter and Richards, like he wasn't about to come in and play down the middle, but he's always been good at faceoffs. And I think for some of his career, he definitely played in the middle, right? He was playing with Voracek and Simmons. So when he was with those guys, he was down the middle. But it just seems like the last 5 years, they have to have had conversations with him a bit when Norris and Stützle. It's like, hey, what do you think? He's like, no, I play. I'll snap back 58% of my draws, but I'll play in the wing.
And fair, if that's what he's comfortable with and that's where he feels most confident, cool.
Assistant GM Claude Giroux, he's making decisions here. But no, Claude's been so awesome for Ottawa this year, and it's still almost surreal that he chose to come to Ottawa and play for the Sens. So it's great to see that he's thriving.
He needed his poutine, Ross.
He needs his poutine. Hey, Shawarma Palace got poutine. I wonder if anybody's going to go grab one of those to celebrate the Anaheim Ducks regulation victory over the Montreal Canadiens. Still can't believe that actually happened. They got outscored 10-0 in their first 2 games in their Eastern Canadian road trip, and then scored 5 on Montreal. Okay, all that to say that great to see Josh Norris back. Tyler Mott also back. Billsy, this is a positive. Looks like he's a game time decision for Saturday in Detroit.
Yep, I like that. And again, I'm not really sure what his situation is, but I would almost have him come in that second game up against Minnesota just to get some fresh legs and maybe give him some extra time. But I'm a very conservative guy when it comes to injuries, so maybe that's just that shining through. But having Tyler Mott, obviously it's not a massive impact, but DJ Smith said it in his press conference today that he does have an impact and he's a great checking player, and the Sens need those guys here.
They certainly do. I'd imagine it's Jake Lucchini first out of the lineup.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably where it's going to go. But that's fine. I'm sure Jake Lucchini doesn't mind collecting that paycheck.
Well, what happens with the goggles? He just hands them out in a suit?
Oh, yeah, true. I hadn't thought of that. Have we had a situation like that before?
No.
I don't think so. Interesting. Okay, that's something to keep our eye on there.
Yeah, something to watch for. But I think they're going to keep him for this road trip up with the big club, right? Just as an extra body. They have an extra defenseman. I feel like on road trips, it's smart to keep an extra guy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be the case, yeah.
Too bad, because that shootout goal he scored against Manitoba last year was so nasty. He's awesome. Great to see the guys salute him and give him that goggle highlight in front of everyone, single him out in front of the team as a 27-year-old playing his first NHL game. But yeah, makes sense. And he's kind of place holding that third line left wing spot for Tyler Mott. And of course, the sooner he can get back, the better. Jacob Bernard Docker also back with the team. Does he come in right away? Like, I mean, Nick Holden is the obvious choice, I think, to come out right now with the way 22's been playing. Do you put him in right away? Because I would.
Yeah, I think this team's better with Jacob Bernard-Docker in the lineup as opposed to Holden. Definitely. I like Holden as a seventh defenseman, not someone that's playing every day. And I really liked what I saw from JBD. And I think it seems like he's ready to make that push, especially if he doesn't have to play major minutes. But it'll be interesting to see how they decide to go when Artem Zub comes back as well.
Yes, it'll definitely be interesting there. Now, I'm just looking at the Sens communications page. Don't see anything yet in terms of what the plan is for tomorrow. I'd imagine no morning skate, right? It's a 1:00 start.
Yeah, no.
But what we are curious is, when will DJ Smith speak to the media? So when he does, you can follow the show on Twitter at SensCentral and Instagram lockedon.senators, and we will get into what it means. And I'm assuming one question that will be asked is, who starts against the Detroit Red Wings? We asked about who Detroit's going to start, whether it's Hellberg, Nedeljkovic, or Ville Husso. I'm hoping it's not the latter. Husso's been having an outstanding season. And I also hope it's not the former, because Magnus Hellberg is a Sens abroad goalie, and we know what that's been.
Let's go for Nedeljkovic. Yeah.
Ned, we want you, buddy. We vote Ned. Who do you start if you're Ottawa? I think I asked you yesterday. You were unsure. Now that we're heading into the weekend, I love a good revenge game, but I think you're starting Talbot against Detroit.
No, I am sure, Ross. I want Talbot up against Detroit. He's simply been the better goalie recently. Although Forsberg in his last 3 games has been good, these points up against Detroit are so much more important than the Minnesota game and even the Winnipeg game, to throw that in there. So you got to have Talbot playing up against Detroit, especially he's been hot. Let him stay in a groove. Here.
So you'll be back for the postcast on Sunday, but they're going to play 2 games before then. Give me a locked-on player of the weekend, Pilsy, for both games. 1 player, 2 games.
Locked-on player for the weekend.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go with Austin Watson here, because remember, he really, you like that choice, eh? He really was heating up against the Detroit Red Wings. Remember, Michigan guy? Didn't he have a couple points up against them at the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. I know he opened the scoring in one of those games, and I believe he had something in another, as I have it. 2 goals and an assist, 3 points in 3 games against Detroit last season.
That's what I'm talking about. And then Austin Watson up against the Nashville Predators, up against his old team. That was his. I'm going to go ahead and say that was his best fight as an Ottawa Senator. Like, easily. I think he really revs things up in these kind of meaningful games for him. So I'm going to go with Austin Watson here, because this team doesn't want to get pushed around when they're down so many men. And you saw what happened up against the Habs, when teams that are just playing out of it in the game, they're going to get chippy, and you don't want Brady having to answer for that. You don't want Branny and some of these smaller guys having to pick up the slack there. So I'm going to have my eyes locked on Austin Watson, and I hope he can kind of keep up that physical game that we know from him in the past, but haven't really seen too much this year.
We're going to talk about it more next week, but Brady Tkachuk seems to score every time he's in Winnipeg. So just
I know, I almost thought Brady, but then I was like, Winnipeg's after, so no.
Yeah, because his grandparents will be in attendance. His mom's side of the family's from Winnipeg, and just have a levy lock ready for Tuesday night. As I think I posted last time, I said these beers brought to you by Brady Tkachuk, anytime goal scorer. I had him in the second period, the double fist. So Brady's just automatic to score in Winnipeg, and I'm going to sprinkle on him being the first goal scorer as well. But we'll get into that more on Monday. In the meantime, we have back-to-back postcasts this weekend from the press box at the Canada Life Center in Winnipeg. And yeah, super fired up to have footy on the call with me. You can find that AHL TV. So I'll have some stories from that on Monday, and we'll hopefully get meth on Monday is what I'm hopeful. But if not, it'll be later in the week. And stay tuned. We're recording next week with Scott Wheeler, a World Junior preview that's going to drop on Boxing Day. So we're going to have your World Junior content covered. And I got around to reading that article, by the way, that he put out on The Athletic about Zach Ostapchuk. Very cool. Definitely recommend.
I got to check that out.
Everyone. Any final thoughts, Pilsy?
Final thoughts are, guys, I know the Ottawa Senators are playing both afternoon games while the Belleville Senators are playing, but You got to check out Ross on the call. I listened last time. You absolutely killed it, buddy. I think you and Footy got some good chemistry. We love Footy on the show. We got to get him back. We've been saying that
he's
a
coming
while.
back.
Footy's the best. We got a great relationship with him when we worked in Belleville. So maybe get it's like your NFL Sunday days. Maybe get a couple screens going here and have the audio on the Belleville game for Footy and Ross.
Well, the beauty is, I mean, on Saturday, Ottawa starts at 1 p.m. and Belleville's at 3. So there's going to be a time there where right after the Sens game, you can tune in, catch the third period with me, and then I'm going to jump on the postcast immediately afterwards. So, and maybe Footy and I will record something with you potentially. Even we can get you in on Sunday afternoon. We can play that on Monday's show as well. My final thoughts. Thanks for everyone for sticking with us this week as we recorded a little bit later than typical. Hope it was worthwhile. I mean, the postcast was electric. They usually are after wins. Next week, it'll be back to some earlier releases, and then we'll get over to our Christmas schedule afterwards, which, you know us, we don't take days off. That's just not how we do it here on the show. But for today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.